Hello, wonderful people of the great World Wide Web. Welcome back to another episode of my Moroccan adventure. Last time I left you with a little cliffhanger. Let's just say the Sahara decided to test me and my bike in ways I wasn't ready for. Don't worry, that story's coming, and trust me, it's worth the wait. But before we dive into desert drama, let's hit the road to Tinghir and Todra Gorge. Twisty high atlas roads, jaw-dropping views, and maybe a surprise or two. It's going to be wild. So strap in, or at least hold on to your helmet, and let's see what's next. In this episode, I also changed my general direction, finally turning from south to north, slowly beginning the long journey back toward home. After spending a few days near Merzouga in the Erkchebi area, more on that adventure later, I started making my way toward Tinghir, where I plan to stay before riding through the Todra Gorge and continuing north. Tinghir is a gorgeous historic town wrapped around an oasis that's been around since before the calendar even started. I ended up staying with a lovely family, and since they had no room for tents, they offered me either a proper room or the chance to sleep outside on the Magil's cushions. And of course, I picked the Magils. Fresh air, stars, and a bit of sand on my face. Yes, please. And I could tell they really appreciated the choice. After settling into my open-air 5-star suite, I wandered through the oasis and ended up toward the old ruined Casablanca. Places like this always pull me in. Those silent streets, the weathered walls, the empty houses holding on to their last whispers of life. You can almost feel the generations that passed through here. If those stones could speak, their stories would probably stop you in your tracks. When I got back to the guest house and my Magil's cushions, they asked me what I wanted for dinner. As always, I told them not to make anything special. Whatever you are having, I'm happy with it. And again, I could see they appreciated that. They invited me to join them for dinner, and later even for a birthday celebration. They welcomed me into the kitchen too. The lady of the house, Hayat, whose name beautifully means life in Arabic, showed me how to make mitfana, the famous Berber pizza, and also taught me the traditional way of preparing Moroccan tea. An unforgettable evening, all thanks to their kindness. The birthday party was an absolute blast. I was amazed at how even the kids could play the bendir, that frame drum with God's snares, and the big long drums. Like rhythm is something they're just born with. And in true Moroccan hospitality, they welcomed me as if I'd always been part of the family. I honestly felt like I belonged there. I had an amazing night. Before falling asleep, I stretched out in my 5-star open-air suit, Magil's cushions under me, sleeping bag around me, and just soaked in the silence. Only the occasional dog bark or a donkey chiming in reminded me I wasn't dreaming already. I drifted off and slept like a baby. The next morning, I woke up to a view that honestly deserved its own video. I could talk for hours about how perfect it all was, but we don't have that kind of time. After a freshly made breakfast and a surprise lunch bag packed for the road by the owners, I said my goodbyes. A little sad to leave, but grateful for every moment. I continued north toward the magnificent Todra Gorge, aiming to arrive early, before the tourist vans and the echoes of footsteps filled the canyon. And wow, what a place! As soon as I entered, I felt small in the best possible way. Those towering walls, around 150 meters high, rise so close on both sides that it feels like riding through a stone canyon carved by time itself. It's one of those rare spots where you slow down without even thinking about it, just to take everything in. I couldn't help imagining the old caravans that passed here for centuries, moving between desert and mountains, crossing the same narrow path. How many people, stories and destinies flowed through this corridor long before any of us showed up. Todra doesn't just show you history, it wraps you in it. But as I was slowly exiting the gorge and the road opened up again, something I'd been avoiding. Something I didn't want to talk about earlier, or even think about while I was on the trip. started creeping back into my mind. I knew that after Todra Gorge, a long, steep climb into the high Atlas Mountains was awaiting for me, and that only intensified my worries about the clutch. Which brings us back to the little cliffhanger I left you with in the last episode. I got myself stuck near Merzouga, right in the Sahara desert. My bike overheated, the oil got so hot it killed the clutch friction, and, well, I wasn't going anywhere. If you missed that episode, no worries, there's a link up in the top right corner. Unfortunately, my GoPro gave up on me too, so there is no more footage of what I like to call the Sahara incident. When I saw the rear wheel wasn't turning, even in gear with throttle, I decided not to risk more damage and just wait, either for help or for the cooler morning when it's not around 45-50 degrees Celsius. I didn't set up the tent right away, just waited for sunset. I had plenty of water, so no panic, but yeah, I was worried. Did I fry the clutch? Well, one step at a time. First, get out of the desert, then deal with the bike. While I was sitting in the shade with my feet buried in the hot sand, just soaking in the silence, a local guy pulled up in a pickup and asked if I was okay. I am fine, not sure about the bike, I told, explaining what happened. He just nodded and said, wait here, I'll be back. About 45 minutes later, he came back with two friends and a rope. We hooked up the bike and the wildest ride of my life began. Being towed through the sand, the bike fishtailing like crazy, I just clung to the handlebars, doing the best not to overcorrect and making sure I didn't drop it and my legs get wrapped before the driver noticed. Somehow we made it to solid ground without a single disaster. I was sweating buckets, but grinning that towing nightmare was finally over. I adjusted the clutch free play, it had completely vanished, hit a starter, put the bike into first gear, and thankfully the oil had cooled enough for the clutch plates to grab again. Sweet relief. The guy just smiled, go ahead, we'll follow you. And just like that, I was back on the road. A little dusty, a little fried, but finally moving again. But the Sahara adventure wasn't over yet. Now it was time to finally enjoy being there, instead of just trying not to break the bike. I was super grateful for his help and tried to pay him, but he refused. For him, taking money from a traveler in trouble just wouldn't be right. I didn't give up though, so I asked if he could at least show me where to get a tea or something to eat. That worked. Not only did they take me there, I even managed to convince them to join me. Over dinner, we chatted about all sorts of things, and by the end we made a deal. The next day, I joined them for a camel ride to a desert camp. But I didn't want to stay at a camp like a normal person. I wanted to sleep alone in the desert. They didn't even blink, sure, basically. So yeah, deal sealed. Apparently, slightly weird guy from Europe that wants to sleep alone in the dunes is just another normal day in the Sahara. They also pointed me to a camp where we'd start the camel ride next day. The guy called the camp owner for me, and it turned out the place wasn't really meant for tents at all. It was more a stopover for camper vans and overlanders. But the owner was a legend. He just grinned and said I could sleep outside on the Majin's cushions for the night. And honestly, what an experience. Lying there under the Saharan sky, stars blazing above me, a couple of local cats curling up nearby like tiny night watchmen. I tried my best to stay awake, not to miss a single second of it. But eventually, after a day of roasting heat, sand, riding stress and mechanical drama, yeah, I passed out like a baby. One of the best sleeps of the trip. The next day, while waiting for the afternoon and that much anticipated camel ride, I gave my bike some love. Cleaned the drive chain, which was absolutely packed with sand. Then I took it for a short test ride, just a few kilometers, all good thankfully. With plenty time to kill, I wandered into Erkçay dunes and decided it would be a great idea to try and climb the highest one. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Walking in Sahara sand with sneakers is, well, torture. Every few meters I had to stop, take them off and dump out half of the desert. I tried going barefoot, but the sand was so hot it felt like walking on a stove. So I surrendered with dignity and headed back for a tea in a little shop near the camp. When I got back, another surprise. A group of French racers and their teams had just arrived with vintage racing cars. That explained why I was only allowed to stay outside for one night. They were setting up for a big party that evening. Honestly, I was relieved. While they be celebrating with their classic car fiesta, I'll be somewhere out in the desert, under the stars, enjoying my own kind of party. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for, the camel ride. And honestly, it was awesome. Not exactly easy though. I never ridden a horse, so hopping on a camel, which is way higher, way wobblier and slightly smug looking, was an experience. But still, I loved every second of it. What really impressed me were the guys leading the camels. They moved effortlessly across the dunes, choosing routes with firmer sand. Unlike me earlier that day, struggling like a lost tourist in a sandbox. Later, we talked about desert navigation. Their explanation was simple. We grew up here, took our first steps in the sand. Just like you know your forests and hills, we know our desert. They also told me that they understand the stars, how the old caravan leaders navigated thousands of miles using them alone. I mean, I struggle navigating a supermarket without Google Maps. Spending the night in the Sahara is its own kind of magic. Once the distant drumming coming from desert camps faded, it was just me, the stars, and a silence so deep it almost felt alive. The wind whispered over the dunes, stars crowded the sky, and for a moment, time didn't feel like a thing that mattered. I wish I could explain it the way it deserves, but I just can't. I could talk for hours about that night, but we don't have that kind of time. The only thing that kept poking holes in that perfect experience was this nagging worry about the bike. Even though it rode fine during the day, I had this feeling the engine wasn't quite right. Maybe it was just my brain messing with me. The next morning, I woke up early to catch the desert at dusk. That quiet moment when the night slowly lets go and the dunes change color with the first light. As we are wrapping up my Sahara desert adventure, let me share a little legend about Erg Shebi. But first, a quick fun fact. When most people hear Sahara, they picture endless sand dunes, right? In reality, most of the Sahara is actually rocky desert. The vast stretches of sands are called ergs, and Erg Shebi is the largest of them, with dunes reaching up to 150 meters high. The rocky parts are called hamada, not as photogenic but still an impressive sight. Now the legend. It's said that Erg Shebi was created as divine punishment. During a festival, some wealthy families who were washing their hands with milk and even playing with couscous turned away a poor woman and her child when they asked for help. According to the legend, that act of cruelty angered God, and a sandstorm of unimaginable power swept through the village, burying both the settlement and its people beneath the dunes. To this day, the dunes stand as a reminder. In the desert, you never turn away a traveler in need. A few hours later, it was time for the camel ride back to the camp where I'd left my bike. Once I arrived, I geared up and for the first time in what felt like ages, pointed the bike north. That moment marked the beginning of my journey back, slowly tracing my way toward the ferry port and eventually home. And now, back to the events in this episode. The ride from Todra Gorge was nothing short of spectacular. The mountains, the high Atlas plateaus, the people I crossed paths with. The climb went smoothly. My Himalayan handled it like a champ, but I couldn't completely relax. Something felt off, like a slight loss of power, or the clutch plate slipping, or maybe the oil was just cooked. Or maybe it was all in my head. Because of the situation with the bike and that growing doubt in my engine, I decided to skip some of the unpaved trails I originally planned to ride. I just didn't have the courage to head into the mountains without being 100% confident in the bike. Still, even on paved roads, the ride was incredible. I made it to Azrou, where I stayed for 2 nights, enjoying the peace at the camp and a little snack bar nearby. That's when I decided to contact the Royal Enfield service center in Casablanca. I explained what happened and asked if they could give the bike a checkup and do an oil and filter change. Once again, the Moroccan willingness to help shone through. From Azrou to Casablanca is roughly 300 kilometers, about 6 hours on the bike. The closer I got to the Atlantic coast, the more the landscape transformed. Almost everything was farmland. After 25 days of riding through remote and rugged areas, it suddenly felt like I crossed into a completely different country, somewhere far more European than what I've been used to it in Morocco. I passed through Rabat, the political capital, a modern city, heavy traffic, busy streets, nothing like what I've seen so far. Honestly, not really my kind of riding environment. But still, I enjoyed it in a strange way. Even though I don't stay long in big cities, I like at least riding through them, just so I can say, yeah, I've been there. Eventually, I rolled into Casablanca and found my way to the Royal Enfield Service Center. That's a wrap for this episode. If you made it all the way here, big thanks. If you liked what you saw, feel free to hit that like button. It helps more than you think. And if you're curious about where I end up next, you can subscribe. Ride safe and keep exploring.